Welcome back to part 3 of this demonstration with Scriptcase. As we now continue, we will begin to create our very first applications within the Scriptcase platform. It is also something we will check out as we continue. So now let's continue and create a new application. And we start off first of all with the grid application. When creating a new application, we are presented with this typical layout for the initial configuration. We must first select our connection for all applications and provide an application name. When selecting a table for the grid application, the name is automatically provided and the SQL statement is also indicated here to the right. We can also select from the fields drop-down list the fields which we want to include within this selection. If we want to edit our SQL statement, we can do so manually here within the select statement. And we can also open the SQL Builder. Within the SQL Builder, we can first select our database table, which is normally automatically selected. Once ready, we select the confirm, which will take us to the next step, being tables. Now within the table selection, we can select the fields or tables which we want to use within this selection, include them, confirm, and from there we can then modify the fields which we want to include from each of the tables. Include them again. We can provide aliases. Don't forget to confirm, and from there then we can create the joins between each table and store them. We can provide conditions. We can also order by, and then we can run and test our SQL statement. Now within the run selection, we can also edit our SQL statement from here if we so choose. So I will go ahead and modify this here, and then we can go ahead and run our statement. We can then view what our statement looks like and configure and test various combinations that we want to use and see exactly the output we will have within our grid. We can then also go ahead and save our statement and then use this within future applications that we create. Returning back to the grid application, we are able to copy and paste our SQL statement within the grid application or any other application that requires the use of tables. Now, if we want to make other changes to the database directly, we can actually access the database from Database and then Database Builder. With the Database Builder open, we first select the connection we are using, and then we have something similar to the phpMyAdmin, where we can then manage our tables, modify the table, as well as alter the information we have there. We can add indexes, foreign keys, as well as triggers, as well as include new items within our tables. We can also provide SQL commands, and we can import or export our tables. We're also able to create new tables within the database. This negates the use of external database applications, so we are able to fully manage all of our applications and data within Scriptcase directly. To exit the database builder, we can either access the log out, which will actually log us out from the database. We do not really want to do this in most situations. In most cases, clicking the home button will suffice. When accessing the grid application again, and we have customized our SQL statement or selected a table. So I will go ahead and select multiple tables in this case because we can select more than one table. So I will select the customers, I'll select the orders, and then also the sales. Now we can see here on multiple selections, the SQL statement is again provided. We also indicated that foreign keys are not automatically detected and that we can then manually define them within the Relationships tab. In the Relationships tab, we can see on the right hand side a diagram, and we're able to move and adjust the layout of our table indicators, as well as here on the left. We can change the direction and relationship of the tables. Clicking one of the lines will allow us to modify the relationship between the tables and then we can specify the correct indicators. For instance, in this case, the first option should be customers, so I will place customers to the top. I will then place orders and sales, and then from here we can see first of all the first relationship is identified, customer ID and customer ID. We can of course click that and verify that, save, and it will update saved by user. Clicking the next one, we can do the same again. In sales, of course, we need a correct identification here, which is then related to the other table. And in this case, we do not have one, so we can see this is already incorrect. It would not really work for this table unless we modify this table within the database builder and add a relationship for the tables. Within the Edit Fields tab, we can modify the field labels before accessing the grid. We can also change the data types, indicate if we want the selected title or field within the grid application or available within the search or filter application. The final tab is the Theme tab. Here we can change the theme per application. Let's return back to the application data, and this time we will only select the sales table, and we will see our SQL statement update as well as the grid name. Now let's go ahead and then create this new table. With the grid application created, we can go ahead and run it for the first time and see what the default selections and options are available. So within the grid, we have first of all our header. We have a toolbar which provides a quick search. We have a dynamic column selection where we can select the columns we want to see within our grid. We have a dynamic sorting option. We also have inbuilt export options where we can export to PDF, Word, Excel, and other file formats. We also have an advanced search. Within the advanced search, we can save our filters and searches which we have searched for previously, and we can define various objects and filters within this application separately. Going back to the grid application, we also have an exit button. For each grid line, we have by default a details option where we can view the field details and customize this within the grid application. Within the bottom toolbar, we have a go to where we can go directly to a page. We have the option to view how many files or how many details, and we have a page navigation as well as then a total count. Going back to the grid application, we can see on the left hand side we have many options available. We have a drop down menu which we can select and open and view other options available. To the right we have our initial module selection. Now the first view on all applications will be the most important settings of the specific application. In this case, for the grid application, which we have here, we have various modules which we can start with. For instance, we could start with the search module. If I select search and then run our application, the grid application will now start with the search module instead of the grid itself. Going back to the grid application, within the modules we can make here various changes to the various modules themselves. So we have the search, the grid, the detail, summary, and also chart. We can deselect these, removing the module from the application. For instance, if I remove here the detail, I will reselect grid and run our application again. We will now receive the grid application and no detail option will be provided within the grid. Returning back to the grid application, I will again enable the detail, and then what we'll do this time is we will modify the toolbar. Now, because I've just gone ahead and changed, it will ask me if I want to save the information that I have just changed within this grid application. So here I selected detail, I did not save the application, and now I am being asked to save the application. Within the toolbar options, we can change here the location of our options. For instance, here if I move the columns over to the left hand side, run our application again, we will see that the columns will now be closer to the quick search. We can then modify the location of each option within the toolbar here, or even remove them or add others that are available. The same is for the bottom toolbar. Below that, we can actually change the button names. For instance, within the grid here, we can see that the button is called Search. Now here within the grid, I can find here the Search button, and I can type Search here instead. If I run my application again, I will now see that the Search now indicates Search here. Returning back to the grid, below the button options, we have the option to set hotkeys within our application. Now we provide automatically a default hotkey selection, and we can also create our own templates if we choose so. To add bindings, we simply need to add the plus key. We select the action we want to use. For instance, I can provide a quick key binding to exporting PDFs. I then select the click here, and then I type the sequence that I want to use within my application. Now we have Shift P. If I then go ahead and run my application again, now within my application, I will now need to click Shift and P, and it will select the export options. Now while we are here, let's go ahead and check out all of the export options we have available. So accessing again the drop-down menu, we have PDF, Word, Excel, XML, and so forth. Export options are available in nearly all applications. Selecting the export option will open the PDF or specific export options per application, for instance, Word, PDF. Here we can change the print settings if we want a color or black and white export. We can see the page layout and change this also. We can also provide an alternative orientation. We can choose to display the header on all pages, as well as display the title of our field within all pages. The next tab allows us to select the columns we want to display within the export. So here I will remove the ID, and I will go ahead and select OK. The grid application will now open the PDF download and option to view it. So once generated, we can select to view or download our application, or simply go back to our grid. Let's go ahead and view this for now. And we can see now within our export, we have our header indicated, we have a page number. Let's return back to our grid application. Within the left-hand menu, below the toolbar, we also have options to change the export options. For instance, we can add the option to send the exported file directly via email. This would essentially provide us within the grid application and export options, the option with PDF and email, which will then directly email the exported PDF to the user. Below that in the left-hand menu, we have the export types, where we can now configure the export options for each of the application or export types that we have available. For instance, here for the PDF, we can define a password for our PDF. We can change the layout, include the various settings within the PDF export options, as well as change the layout and force it upon the exported application. Now, we have this available for all export types, Word, CSV, Excel, and we have them various options depending on the type of export. Now before we continue down, let's go back up here to the top. We have here, for instance, the edit fields, where we are able to modify and adjust the field layouts of the grid application. We can also here change the label, we can change the data type, we can provide a line break within the PDF, as well as change the alignment and color of the field itself. We can then simply display them or not display them. Once we are ready with our changes, we can choose to save the application or simply select another option, which will then give us the save option also. Within the fields positioning, we can change here rapidly the location or direction of the field types we have within our grid. For instance, I can move them around here, select multiple at a time, and move them around a little quicker than I can do within the edit fields. If we need to make changes to our SQL, then we can do so within the SQL option. Here again, we can change our SQL statement. So here I could remove, for instance, some of these fields, or we can include them again by adding them manually. We can also limit the amount of records we retrieve. We can change the connection of our grid. We can even customize the no records found message and format this in any way we like. We have many more options available, as well as the individual fields, which we can then select, layout options, and even events, which we can apply within the grid application. We have group by options, a summary, search, and more refined options per module that we have available within the grid application. So let's go back to our modules, and what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and change our grid application to a search module. We will save this. We will then navigate down here to the search options. Within the search options, we have our settings where we can set our criteria to and or, we can display the conditions, and we can also use autocomplete fields. We also have the search criteria, which we can define per field. So I will go ahead now and access the advanced search options, which allow us then to change the specific advanced search. So now here we can again change specific settings towards the advanced search. We can then also select fields. So here I will go ahead and remove the ID field. I will leave sales date, region, category, and I will include the quantity sold. I will then go ahead and save my field. And then I will also access the search criteria again. Here we can define the search criteria per field. For instance, for the category, we can specify if it contains, does not contain, equal to, or is empty. So I will remove the empty and equal to. So it must contain. I have then also the option to show the condition or not to show the condition. And then we also have that for the region. So there I will go ahead and do the same again. The region must contain what has been selected. Now below the search criteria and the advanced search, we also have the fields option. Here we can change the individual fields themselves. So for instance, on sales date, let's go ahead and access that. We can change here the field type of the sales date. As it is a date, it is correct. We can change the display format. We can also display a full calendar if we wish, and we can limit the total years and other various options. Below this, for each field, we have the display options where we can also customize the field and how it is displayed. And right at the bottom of all fields, we have the help description which we can apply. Here we can specify if we want to display a help for the field. So I will go ahead and indicate a help me here. And I will add this as a hint. Now, if I go ahead and run our application again, we should first start with the search module. And as we see, we have a region and category here. We have no options defined. For the sales date, we had applied a help me tip. Let's return back to our grid and customize this a little further. For our region field and category field, we may want to include a select menu. So here I can select region. I'll come down and use the select selection. Once changed, we will have various options change for us, and here we will then be able to apply a lookup method. Here I can select automatic and create a select. I will then select my regions table and then display the region description. I'll choose the connection and then select to display a title. Now when I run my search again, the region will now be provided with a select menu. Now as we see, our search results have found nothing, and the simple reason for this is that our region select list is possibly not using the ID as the reference. So we can return back here to the grid, and then we can manually change our SQL statement for the region selection. So here I will change this to description and then run our grid application again. I'll select a region and perform a search, and this time we have the relevant data available. With our filter selected and found, we can then also save our filter and use it within a future stage. Then within our search, we will receive a new drop-down menu, and there we will have the stored searches and filters which have been previously used. Returning back to our grid application, let's go ahead and add a group by. Within the group by, we will need to select the static group by and a new group by. So here I will select category, sales date again, and I will have yearly and then also monthly. By default, all fields we can modify the X and Y axis. We can also modify on date fields the duration of, which we have just done so. Now for grid totals, I will go ahead and add quantity sold and quantity sold in summary totals. I will then go ahead and run our application again. And now this time within our search, if I apply my filter and search again, our grid application now has everything grouped, first via the category, then via the month and year. Let's go back to our grid application and we are going to change the module back to grid and then save our application. Now let's go ahead and modify the layout slightly so we have our header and footer within the layout section, and here at the moment we have our title and date displayed. So let's change this around a little. I will move the title to the right hand side, and on the left I will display an image which will be our application logo. So now within the image manager I can navigate around and find the logo and place it within our application. So here I will select the Scriptcase logo, add this and run our application again. Now within our grid application we should be having first of all our module with the grouped categories as we had provided, and now with the new header layout. Now as we have grouped our application, we now also have the summary available. Clicking this will open the summary module of the grid application. Now we have some different alternative options here, and we can see here we have the categories and we have full-on drill down capabilities of the summary application. Going back to the summary again, we can drill down to month, year as we have grouped within our application if we choose so. We also have chart options available, which we can then change the chart options and view out of the application. Now if I select here pie, I'll select OK, and we have here a chart symbol. We can click this and that will open the related chart. Within the chart we also have drill down options available, and we can click through and see everything we want to see according to our data. To the top left here we also have various options for our chart where we can change again the layout as we had done so a moment ago and display the chart how we so please. We can change the layout entirely, the height, the width, as well as change the sorting values and so forth. Making changes within the grid will all dynamically happen as we want them. Let's return back to our summary again. Here we also have other settings available for the pivot table. So here we can change the category, the month of sales date, as well as the year of sales date as we have within our summary settings. Here we can change also the tabular format. Within detail, we can view specific details regarding the information we are seeing. So the summary itself. Then if we drill down to say a date, we then have the detail information available. Coming back to the summary again, we also have our export options available as we do within our grid. Now within each grouped section, so here we have beverages, we have the initial grid, we have another grid which we can view for the year of sales date, and view targeted information which we have configured within our application. Within the summary, when we come to export our information, we can now select to use other options within our export. So here for PDF, for instance, we can now choose to export all modules, the grid, summary, and chart. We can then also again change the other alternative options which were previously available, and we also can generate bookmarks for each grouped topic. For the chart, we can also specify if we want to provide the category, month of sales, or year of sales date fields. We can also define the columns as we were able to do so previously. If I go ahead and export our PDF, once our PDF has been generated, we can again go ahead and view it. And now we have also available the bookmarks within the grouped categories, where we can simply select a bookmark and view specific information we want to view within our export. Scrolling all the way down to the bottom, will then present us also the charts which are available and have also been exported within our PDF. Returning back to our grid application, we have one important feature missing from our grid, which is what we want to add next, and that is the ability to edit the field data as well as add new entries within this table. So let's return back to our grid application, and this time we are going to go ahead and create a new application and select this time the form application. We're also going to select the table sales, leave the default name, and go ahead and select the create button. Now that our form sales is created, we can go ahead and run it and check out the default form. Now within the default form we have the same toolbar options as we had within our grid. We have the quick search and we have our page navigation and counts. We also have the add new, save and delete buttons available, and our form is then fully ready to use. So we can go ahead and return back to our grid application, and we can then access the application links, and here we can select to create a new link. Within the link types we have various links to select from. So we first have an edit link, which is a grid to a form application, which is what we will want to use in this case. We also have the option for a field link. A field link would be attached to a specific field within the grid application. So to the right here we can select the field we want to apply the link to, and then apply a link or application to this specific field. The next field link type is the capture link. The capture link will take information from the grid application and insert it into a form application. This is a specific type of link which we won't be using during this demo. So now let's go ahead and access the edit link and select the next button. Now we select our form cells which we have available and click next again, and we can then define the parameters within the form as well as the grid and ensure that they are both identified. So here we have ID and ID again. When we are ready we can go ahead and click confirm. We then have our link properties. We can select here to open in the same window, in another window, in an iframe, in a parent, and even a modal window. So I'll leave it in the same window for the time being. We can also define hotkeys and specify the exit applications. For now I'll just go ahead and click save. Now if I run the grid application again, within the grid application we can now see that we have available edit buttons for each indicated value. So here I can now select the edit this row, and I am now presented with the available form. Now let's go back to our grid again, and now we want to add an add button to the top of our toolbar. So let's return back to our grid, and this time we will select buttons and the option to new button. Within the new button options we can first specify a name. So I will say new and then button. I will select the type as link and then select create. I can then here change the label. I can include a hint as well as a confirmation message. I then need to select the application which I want to link this button to. Again, I will select the form sales and provide the relevant values if there are any. As it is a new entry, I will not want to pass any values at all. I will then confirm, and then we can run our application again. Now within the grid we have a new add new button. We can then modify the layout of the toolbar again within our grid application and change the location of this new button and move it over to the right or to the left so that it is a little tidier than it is currently. Okay, so returning back to the grid application, we're going to make some final modifications here. So first of all, I'm going to move this search button all the way up to the left hand side here, and then we're going to go ahead and access the left menu again and go to the refine search and select the fields. Now here we're going to go ahead and select the category as well as the sales date, the quantity sales sold, as well as the region. So let's go ahead and save that, and then we'll be able to access the edit fields tab, and here we're able to change the values that we have here. So for quantity sold I will want a range displayed and we'll increment by 5. We will also display the value. For the category, sales date and region, we will leave the multi-select and also specify the category to be open, sales date to be closed, quantity sold open, and region also to be closed. For the date, we can also modify how the date is displayed, the day, month, year. So I will select month and year and select the Save button. And then we'll also go ahead and run our grid application again. Now within the grid application, we can now have our refined search on the left-hand side. And we can select here the values that we want to have displayed within our grid application, as well as apply multiple values that we want to have displayed. Within our refined search, we'd also select to use the multi-select option so that we can select multiple values at a time. So again, instead of selecting one value as we had just done so, we'd select the multi-select, and then we can select the multiple values that we want to have displayed within our grid application. Okay, so now let's return back to our grid application, and what we're going to do is we're going to close all of our applications. Within our home section, we now have our application management area. So here on the left hand side, we can select to view all applications, my applications, which have been created by myself, my recent applications, and then the root folder, which is where I can also create multiple or further folders to organize my applications. So here I'll create a sales folder, and then I can move my applications that I have now created into the sales folder. I'll select all applications and then the move button, and then move them into the sales folder. Now within the applications management area, we'll also have the options to run our application, edit our application, copy it, as well as rename it. Now our grid sales, we want to go ahead and copy this, and I'm going to call this grid sales and summary, and select OK. Now before we continue, when selecting each application, at the bottom the options become available. Here we can also edit, generate, deploy individual applications, delete them, copy them, move them to relevant folders, as well as export them to other applications. When clicking an application, we open it for edit. Now our grid sales summary, we want to go ahead and change the initial module to summary, and I will save my application and go ahead and run it. Now we have our grid and summary available as we had seen previously. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to add a grid filter to this, as well as configure the chart options. So now within our grid, we first want to access the summary section, and then here we have our settings, which we are able to change. So here we can change various options for the summary itself. Here we can change the layout settings, as well as label, as well as display values. We also have the toolbar for our summary window or summary application, which is separate from the grid, as we can see here, as we no longer have our logo here displayed either. So now let's also go ahead and add that first of all within the layout. We select the header and footer again, and we will change around the layout. Title goes where the date is, and the title becomes image. And then the image is then our logo, which we have selected. And we can run that again, and we will already have our logo and title displayed as we had them within our grid application. So now we're going to also go ahead and modify the toolbar slightly and move all of these options around so that they are also a little more organized. So we will move the exit over to the right, as we have done so here, and save that. Okay, so then the final thing we are going to apply to our summary is the refined search. So we access our search, and from here we can then already view some settings, display combo box quantity. We don't need this. We do, however, need to select our fields. Okay, so we're going to apply some search fields here. I'll apply first of all the region and select category, and then let's also go via quantity sold, and let's say also sales. Now if we save this. Okay, so once we have our search fields defined, we can then select the edit button on the right hand side. We can then change the label for the field, so I will change this to region, I will leave a select box for the region, and we also have the option to define some date ranges and so forth for different values. We then also have lookup methods available where we can select automatic or manual and define the lookups for the values if required. In this case we don't need, so I will leave that as blank and select OK. We can then edit the category. Again, I will change the name. I will also select a multi-select box instead of a select box. Again, we have the values and lookup, which we do not require, so I'll go OK again. For the quantity sold and sales, we have the option of adding a slider bar if we so choose and incrementing the range. We have again the value to change the label, as well as a function. So here we can define if we want to sum, min, maximum, average, variance, and so forth for the values. We also have a lookup available also. I'll again go OK. And for sales, again, we have a slider. Here I have selected count. I'll select OK. And we will run our summary application. Now within the summary application, we can see now that we have a refined search available within the summary. So here we can then select our region now, and it will then define or provide our definitions within the summary below. Of course, we can also adjust the sliders and make our changes how we so please, and select multiple categories if we again so choose so. As always, we can select then the charts and view further information regarding the specifications which we have defined within our summary grid. Thank you very much for watching part 3. In the next part of this demonstration, we will be taking a look at the form applications and continue building our small project. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.